Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Coolie McDoolie podcast. I'm Billy Gillane, as always, joined once again by Colby Spitz. And today we are going to run down a few different things. We're going to talk about the new Annihilation movie that came out. We're going to give our thoughts on we're going to talk about the Oscar winners, give you our thoughts on that as well. We're going to start today, though, first of all, with the news of Avengers Infinity War has been moved up the last weekend of April 27th, I want to say.
Yeah, so it's been
So
moved up a week.
yeah. So Colby, why do you think they did that, man?
Honestly, I think because a lot of people were not really, upset about it, but just confused as to why. We were getting Disney put a Marvel movie coming out on May the 4th instead of Star Wars because, May the 4th be with you, the whole Star Wars
Yeah,
day
absolutely.
gag. So I really think they were just like, you know what, let's just move it up. I really just think that, that's probably all that the reason really was for it.
I agree for the most part. I think most of the reason they did it was because May is fairly crowded. With Star Wars coming out May 25th, Deadpool 2 coming out, I believe the week before that,
Yeah.
May 18th. Obviously, Infinity War is a big deal. I guess they want to give it as much of an opportunity as it can to make money. So giving it that extra week before those films come out seems
Yeah.
like it's a good idea. Plus, we have to wait one less week to see it, so I'm not complaining. Um,
Yeah, I just think April's a really dry month for movies.
yeah,
So
It doesn't look like there's tons coming out in April. Um,
especially not blockbuster wise. That's the thing. Like there might be like movies that pique people's interest, but no big blockbusters.
yeah, absolutely.
As far as I can think, like The Wrinkle in Time is pretty much the last blockbuster until Infinity War.
Yeah, Wrinkle in Time comes out this week. Tomb Raider comes out in March.
Right.
Ready Player One comes out in March.
Okay. Writer Player One.
Yeah. And then April, I'm looking through it. A Quiet Place comes out the first week, but that's not going to be a challenge for Infinity War at all.
Right.
You have Rampage in April 20th, starring The Rock. I don't know. That's another one of those rock action films. I guess similar in a way to like San Andreas and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, other than that, April is not crowded at all. Um, if I were them, I might have even pushed it up another week or two.
Well, I
But
think a lot of it has to be, they want to let Black Panther have its run, but they want to keep the
yeah,
same
that makes
hype
sense
from
too.
that movie to carry into the next one.
Yep.
So kind of limit that time gap to let people lose interest.
Yeah, because Black Panther's still going very, very strong. So
Yeah, it's still putting up outrageous numbers,
say it made like 66 million in its third week. So,
which that's unbelievable.
it's crazy.
You were just saying you saw it for the third time, and
Yeah.
there's plenty of other people that have. So
It's a well, I saw it for the third time this weekend, and the theater was still packed on its third weekend on a Sunday night. It's crazy.
yeah, that's pretty wild. But enough about that. It's just a week. Uh,
It's just a week. We got more important things to talk about. Like a movie that we saw. I think gauging from the way you reacted to it a little bit, you thought it was as did I, called Annihilation, um, starring Natalie Portman, same man who brought us Ex Machina. Uh, what are your thoughts on that film?
So I came in, not expecting a whole lot. I'd heard, both positive and negative reviews, and I haven't seen Ex Machina, and I'm not a huge fan of Natalie Portman. So I just didn't really have expectations. And as I'm sitting through the movie, um, I was really, really engaged the whole time. And, some of the performances were really good. Some were a little odd. Natalie Portman didn't blow me away, but she was very bearable. Um, but overall,
Wow, that hurts, man.
well, yeah, I know you're a Natalie Portman fan, but no, I thought it was pretty bearable. But and then as the movie kind of came to its climax and we got towards the end, I realized how genuinely captivated I was by this movie. And the more that I've
Yeah.
sat and thought about it, I thought it was brilliant.
hmm Yeah, for me, this is a movie that it started off fairly slow for me. Should we put up a spoilers at all or?
We'll give it a few minutes without spoilers, and then we'll get into it.
So for me, it started off a little slow, probably about the first maybe 20 minutes or so. It took a little while for me to get into it, but once the actual, I guess, what the
Yeah,
bubble
the
place,
shimmer.
the shimmer, that's what it's called. I was 100% into this film. The visuals were absolutely stunning. It had some of the most genuinely creepy, kind of cringy moments I've seen in the theater in a while.
Definitely.
Um, and yeah, it's one of those films I walked out afterwards. Originally, I was kind of like, I was really into the movie. I walked out, and I was just like, I don't know how I feel about this film.
Yeah.
About it for a little while, and then I finally kind of was like, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. Because I was hyped about this one before I saw it. I was excited for this one. And I definitely think it was a quality film overall.
Yeah, I thought it was it's ended up being very underrated. A lot of critics are saying some good things about it, but overall, it feels like people just aren't going to see it, and I think that's a huge disservice to this movie. It's breathtakingly beautiful. It's disturbingly scary at some certain points.
Absolutely.
Like you said, it's very not cringy in the comedic sense, but in the way that you're doubled over, like creeped out.
Yeah, like there's certain points where like I want to look away from the screen, but I can't, or um, like I just kind of like ooh, like
Yeah, exactly. It's just like the heebie-jeebies, I guess.
Yeah.
But
But
no, it's
this,
absolutely beautiful. It's very thoughtful and thought-provoking.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, I just really think it's an underrated film that needs a little bit more attention.
Yeah, no, this is a very underrated film, but it's also like watching it. It's not a film for everybody.
Right.
The people I saw with, not all of them, I don't think, loved this movie all that much. They kind of walked out and were excited about it, just because it is even like after they get into the shimmer, it's still it's still fairly slow. It's a lot of a slow build, a slow payoff in this film. Um, and I feel like some of the trailers advertised it as much more of an action film than it was.
hmm Yeah. Like it was a little. The marketing wasn't bad.
Yeah,
At certain points, it gave away a little bit too much, or a little bit misleading. But it wasn't. It seemed to do fairly well. Didn't tell me everything. It teased a bit. So
yeah, but yeah, this is not a film I'd recommend for everybody. Like I would not ever, and under any circumstances, take my mom to see this film. Um, it's like it's one of those things like if you're more like used to like blockbuster type films that are action packed, fast paced, this is going to be a different experience. Um, if you want
exactly.
everything kind of neatly resolved by the end of the film with like a nice bow on top and everything, it's not. This film isn't for you either. It's a film that there's a lot of loose ends. Some of them, I'm fine with. Some of them, I'm not so fine with. It lets you think after the film's over. Um, and yeah, I like it, but I understand it's not for everybody.
I will say, it's not for everybody, but it's for more people than are going to see it. Just
That's fair.
because I have heard that. Um, let's see here. I actually have the article pulled up. Annihilation will be internationally available on Netflix on March 12th, excluding the United States, Canada, and China. But it's already going straight to Netflix within about 2 or 3 weeks of being released. And that really upsets me just because I think it's, like I said, it's underrated, but it's disturbingly, it shouldn't be as underrated as it is.
Yeah,
It
go for it.
It's almost like if it came out in like the 70s or the 80s, I get the feeling that it would be known as like one of those cult sci-fi movies that everybody's seen, and if you haven't, you're not a true sci-fi fan type thing.
Yeah. I think it could get to that kind of status. You could be looking back 20 or 30 years from now, and like Annihilation could be one of those like sick under the radar kind of science fiction movies that like science fiction fans genuinely love. Um, but I was gonna say something, but I forgot what it was. um, so yeah, that. Um,
So let's get into spoilers just a little bit here.
That's cool with me. So spoiler alert.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, if it's still in theaters by you, even.
I remember what I was gonna say.
Oh shoot!
Okay,
go for it.
Just bringing back up to the whole Netflix thing. For me, this is a movie that it's a beautiful film. It's a film that is much better if you're seeing it in theaters as opposed to seeing it on like a TV screen.
Exactly.
In your house.
And
this to me is a film that, like, seeing it on the big screen, the visuals are beautiful, the suspense, the kind of frightening feelings you get throughout this film. It's worth it to see it on a big screen in the theater, and the fact that, like you said, several places aren't going to get that opportunity. It's a little unfortunate, but.
Yeah, absolutely. It the score of it, at least especially in the last 20 minutes, half an hour, where it's this very guttural feeling. It's very heavy and suspenseful. You lose a lot of that feeling, when you're just watching it on your laptop or, watching it in the living room with your friends or family. It loses a lot of that suspense and a lot of the impact of that scene. And overall the entirety of the movie. But okay, so into spoilers.
Yes, spoilers.
So here's our second warning, in case you decide to ignore the first one. If you can still see this in theaters, I strongly suggest it.
Yeah.
But so overall, what would you think about a lot of the scenes in it? Once they went into the shimmer. Or what were your problems with it?
Yeah, so for me, like I said, before this film got into the shimmer, I was kind of not into it as much, It's a very slow film throughout, but when they're not in the shimmer and they're just kind of chilling there at the lab, I guess, it really wasn't getting me into it yet. When they get into the shimmer and the things they start seeing, I loved kind of the gradual, as they got closer, things got weirder and weirder. Like it starts with just like the crocodile and like the different plants all growing on the same vine,
right?
And then it gets into like, hey, these people are actually like, or these plants are growing in the shape of people, and there's this weird God. Like the skeleton bear thing, which that thing, man, that was probably the creepiest moment of the entire film.
Okay, to get off on a little tangent, that was one of the best horror devices I've seen in a movie in a long time. That was scarier than anything I'd seen in It.
I'll give you that.
I genuinely thought it was horrifying how it, the overall look of it with the skull and the fur and the, just the overall look. And, I was already creeped out. And then it opened its mouth and I was expecting this really, disturbing roar. And you just hear the screaming of a lady. And
that for me, that's what gave me kind of chills, and like it was her screaming, and it's like when the it was a bear went to talk, it just kind of threw me off, and I was like,
yeah,
that's no sir.
I can honestly say that was the most scared I'd felt in the theater in quite a while.
I like as a kid I stayed away from horror films in theaters so,
for that exact reason, something like that. That was honestly nightmare fuel, and I applaud Annihilation for that. They handled a lot of situations with a very similar manner.
Horror in this film, but the horror it does do is done very, very well.
Exactly, I wouldn't call it necessarily a horror film.
Yeah,
But it's not like strictly sci-fi. Like it has its moments of
it's more of a thriller suspense film. Yeah.
sure. Um, but since we're in spoilers, I will say when I said I Natalie Portman was bearable. The very beginning, um, and a lot through it, I thought she can act. This isn't her worst performance. It's nothing like the prequels of Star Wars, but
Hey man, you want to start?
hey, it wouldn't be an episode of this if I didn't throw a little bit of shade at the prequels.
That's fair. But
But her acting chops were a little bit more obvious. She can act when she needs to, but there were a few scenes or a few lines or where she just it felt a little off, like she didn't deliver that line the right way,
yeah,
or she didn't know exactly what she was like how she was supposed to say it, or with what
absolutely.
inflection of her voice.
Um, you see, for me, the acting in this film wasn't an issue or a huge issue at least. Maybe my biggest issue with this film is more of the you see the five characters that go into the shimmer,
Mm-hmm.
super well fleshed out characters, come sort of kind of character archetypes a little bit if you like um there's the one was it Gina Rodriguez's character Anya Thornton.
Yes.
She like the one who goes kind of like crazy when before the bear attacks.
Sure.
That kind of archetype character, like like as soon as they went in the shimmer, like I started to see like, wow, she's gonna do this, like and this is what's gonna happen with her.
Really? You thought they were pretty two-dimensional characters?
Not not two dimensional, just kind of like, oh, I saw where this character was going, and oh, I saw where this character was going.
That surprises me. I thought they stayed away from that pretty well.
Mainly with the her, and then the one that died first,
Oh, I can't think of the actress's
Shepherd.
name. Yeah, Shepard.
Shepherd.
Um,
I like as soon as like the night scene started happening, and like they set it up because like she has like the kind of conversation with Natalie Portman's character, and then I'm like, oh, she's dead.
yeah. I mean,
There were certain parts that felt predictable.
I can understand where you're coming from with the predictability of it, but I will say in the favor of the movie, um, I wasn't sure. I was watching this movie and I was so engrossed in it that I wasn't sitting there like, oh, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, she's gonna die. I was just like, take me on the journey.
Yeah, well,
And
it was like I said, it wasn't like that forever. It was just specifically those two points. It's like um with Shepard, like as soon as that scene kind of started and they're up in like the tower thing, and she kind of
sure.
talked, and now Natalie Portman goes downstairs. I'm like, she's gonna die.
And I mean,
This kind of my feeling there. And
so
then with the other character, like I said, it was a slow burn, but like you could see it coming throughout. And it's like I said, it's not entirely a bad thing. Predictability is not always bad. It's just for me in a film like this where there's a lot of things that like weren't easy to predict, and I didn't know where everything was going. The fact that there was a couple things that did, they stood out to me
sure. Um,
as
so and since we're
predictable.
talking about kind of once what happens once they're in the shimmer, there were a few twists that I didn't see coming, but what a few, like the found footage scene with
Mhm.
I just want to call him Poe Dameron, Oscar Isaac. I thought that was really really interesting, and a lot of the scenes that they're kind of just going in and they don't know how far the previous group made it. You just kind of have to put the pieces together as you go. I thought it was handled very well. I thought it was very interesting, and the one thing that I thought as I was watching this movie, I was like, it just makes me feel like death is beautiful sometimes, and
Yeah,
it
like
had a very
especially
introspective thought process on death and when we die and are we always growing and growth and humanity. you know I don't know if that makes
I
sense, but
mean, evolution and things that are always changing, and it's change isn't always bad. Is kind of the thing I walked out with this film. You
sure.
know, it's like we say with the thing that stuck out to me most in this film is like I guess the alien life form that we see at near the end of the film.
Right.
Not necessarily evil, you know. Like
Yeah,
Natalie Portman even says, like, did it attack you? No, it defended itself. I attacked it. Like,
exactly.
it's like it wasn't inherently like bad, and I mean, it was there, and it was changing things. And like you said, most of the things it was changing into absolutely stunning and beautiful things.
Absolutely. I will say those last half an hour or 20 minutes or whatever it might be, with the alien life form, um, you know, there's no dialogue. It's an epic, grand electronic score,
Hmm.
and I didn't say a word. I wasn't thinking anything. I thought it was such a beautiful scene.
Yeah,
Um, you know, 'cause it's because most of these alien movies that have the suspense or the horror elements, the aliens always coming to destroy Earth or this, that, or the
hmm,
other thing, and this took that trope and it kind of just said, what if it wasn't destroying but creating?
yeah,
And I thought there was a lot of beauty and a lot of intelligence that went into that idea.
yeah. No, I absolutely agree. That last, um, I guess that last act with the alien, I was glued to the screen when that was happening. It was absolutely fantastic. I how do you feel about the very end after she gets out of the shimmer?
Are you talking about the sequence where she's kind of getting interviewed,
I'm talking about
like the very last scene?
I'm talking specifically the very last scene, but we can talk about the whole flash forward and flashbacking thing as well if you want.
Yeah. So with the we'll get into the flash forward flashback scene in just a second because that's one of my flaws.
Hmm.
Um, but with the very last scene, I thought it was interesting, but it also felt like the studio kind of had a hand in that because they didn't trust this movie. They were just like, oh, let's throw something at the very end just to keep people oh, I missed that, or I didn't expect that. Just a little twist at the end.
Yeah,
It wasn't bad. It just didn't feel necessary. But it also kind of makes you wonder what's real and what's fake this entire movie. So it's
yeah.
kind of interesting.
It felt very much like the ending of like the first thing I thought when I saw that was like, oh, this is like the ending of Inception, like the last scene in Inception where he spins the thing.
Right, right.
That's kind of where my head went to. Um, yeah, I don't know, like when I first saw it, it threw me off because I'm like, she killed the alien, like the alien burnt, pulled the grenade in there and everything. Um, like I said, that's one of the things I thought about probably the most after I saw this was the ending.
I will say though, as I was watching it, as I was watching the very final scenes, especially that 20-minute span, I was already thinking as she was coming out, like, what if that's not actually Natalie Portman's character, but what if that is the alien?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then they kind of at the very end they show that, and I was like, well, you kind of took away a little bit of mystery.
I don't necessarily believe that because here's the thing: I don't think it necessarily is the alien is good and dead. But one thing that they hammer home throughout this film is that you're constantly changing when you're in there.
Right.
So I don't believe he's at all the same person that came out. I believe that there is still effects from the shimmer and the events that she had that stayed with her and caused her to change into something similar, maybe to the alien, perhaps. Since
Sure.
she,
All right. So
or an alien. But
yeah,
no,
and
I
then
mean,
we'll get into flaws a little bit. We already touched on this a little bit, but what were some of your flaws with it?
yeah, like I said, the first part of the film for me was tough. The first probably 20 minutes of it before they get into the shimmer was tough for me. Um, uh, the characters, I felt like some of it was a little too predictable, perhaps, with those five characters.
Right.
Um, don't have tons of issues with this film. The whole flash forward, the whole like flashback sequences and stuff. Because they flash back and then they also do the flash kind of forward thing. With the interview.
Yeah.
It felt for a while, like especially the flashback stuff to the affair, I guess, with the guy.
Mm-hmm.
It felt unnecessary for a little while, but like I got why it was there at the end.
Right.
So that's not so much a flaw. And then the whole stuff of her being interviewed after the fact. I don't really know how I feel about that in comparison to this film. So I mean, what do you have as your flaws?
Yeah, I will say the interview sequences, where they keep cutting, um, it was done well enough that it wasn't taking me out of the movie, but
Yeah.
I felt like it didn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just continue the way you were going, maybe give me a little bit more on a certain character. You don't, they did well on fleshing out the characters, but it did feel like they didn't need to be there, and knowing that she was going to survive the entirety of the time, it just took me out a little bit.
Yeah.
It took a bit of the suspense and the
Yeah, I never had any doubt that she'd come out alive. They make that I feel pretty clear in the trailers and everything.
right, but that's
Um,
still that's part of that whole. Without those cutscenes, or I guess those cutscenes, you wouldn't really know. You'd just be kind of, you wouldn't know
yeah,
either way.
and I don't know. Like I said, I don't think the film was. And then, well, I guess I could say this: the film leaves it open. She may have not made it out of there alive. We just talked about earlier. She might not have made it out.
Right,
That might be a different life form. We honestly we don't know.
and that goes back to the when Oscar Isaac comes back in the
Yeah,
beginning, was that an alien?
yeah.
Um,
Like I said, it I don't have a problem with it because it still leaves her fate very much up in the air. It doesn't take away from that for me.
yeah, okay, I
I
think
think.
that's fair. But overall, uh, I think that was about it for my flaws with it. I thought it was a fantastically done film,
Yep.
breathtaking. You mentioned this for a little while, for a split second there. The flowers that grew into the shape of humans, and the way that the one character, kind of became one of those trees.
Yeah.
Um, I thought it was breathtaking. I thought that was one of the most beautiful scenes I've seen in a movie in a little while now.
Hmm.
Um, I was overall I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. I would recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah. I for the most part I agree with that. Anything else you want to add, or do you want to go ahead and give our grades?
Yeah, I was gonna say let's go ahead and rank it. What are you feeling on a 1 to 10?
Doing 1 to 10. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna say 7.5. I'll
You're
go
feeling a
seven and a
seven and a
half.
half.
Yeah.
I would be willing to go. I'm probably at like a 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, like an 8.75, a 9. I feel like it's just an underlooked movie that people are gonna be thinking about for the next while. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, there's not too much that I can say was wrong with this movie. It was a very intelligent film, and well thought out, well executed.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's easily one of my favorite movies of the year. It's
For me,
right up there with Black
it's
Panther.
only March.
Say it again.
It's only March.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no, it's only March, but it is up there with Black Panther and a couple other movies that I've seen. I thought it was fantastic.
yeah. Yeah, no, this is a film for me that probably when we get to the end of the year will be in contention for one of my top films of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. All
It's
right.
it's it's for me it's one of those films. It's like I want to love it, I really do. But the flaws that stick out to me, they stick out to me. Take away
Right.
from it a little bit, and it's just one of those films. I don't see myself like I'll go back to it, but I don't see myself going back to this as much as a Black Panther or films such as that. Like this is a film that like I may watch every once in a while, but like I'm gonna have to be in the right mood to watch. I'm gonna have to be like watch this tonight. Like
See, I would say I prefer this over Black Panther.
you do.
I don't know if that's just because I'm kind of getting sick of the blockbuster superhero thing.
Hmm.
But it's the smaller ones, the think pieces that, I'm starting to prefer these movies a bit more.
Yeah, I totally get that. And like I said, I love this movie and I love movies like this. It's one of those things where what took away from it a little bit is like I don't know, like after I saw it, I was like I want to see this again, but I don't want to see this again.
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
the same thing like when I saw Logan that first time, like after I got out of the theater that first time, I was like, good movie, but man, I don't want to feel like that again. Like
Right.
I don't know if I want to see this again. I ended up seeing it like 5 more times in theaters.
And then the
um,
thing with seeing Annihilation, I do kind of get the feeling that nothing can top that first time you see it.
yeah, exactly.
Just because you don't know where it's going, you don't know how it's going to play out.
Hmm.
And nothing can really top that first time, especially if you've seen it in theaters, because you then get that, like I said,
Yeah,
that very guttural feeling just during the whole ending of that movie.
yeah,
Um,
like that's the thing. I think the mystery kind of genre as a whole, I feel like it takes a lot away from like the second viewing because you kind of already know everything that's starting to happen. You can
right.
still kind of on the second viewing put more things together and stuff, and it can be engaging in that way. I think what you said is very true. I mean, seeing this film for a second time, like or something, like it's not going to be the same experience. It just won't be. And in the theater was this is one of those films that benefits tremendously from that.
Yeah.
So
But I will say that I think that there is enough in for it to watch it the third time, and still be able to, piece it together. Little things, Easter eggs, um, just small little thematic elements that all tie into it overall.
yeah,
I think it'll stand the test of time,
yeah,
and it'll be
absolutely.
looked back
It's
in
one
a
of
few
those.
years as one of the better sci-fi movies to come out.
It's one of those films you can definitely like. You'll find new things each time you watch it, probably for a few rewatches.
Definitely.
Um, okay, so let's go ahead and I guess get into the Oscars happened this past Sunday.
Yep.
People won some awards, so
A few people did.
yeah. So why don't we go ahead and get some thoughts? We're gonna only cover some of the major categories: what best actor, best actress, director, original screenplay.
Yeah, just
Uh,
some of those ones. Um,
yeah, best film.
but I do want to shout out Kobe Bryant has now
Oh,
won an Oscar, and that made me so excited. I was happy to see that. I thought it was really cool.
Kobe Bryant has done something that never did, to my knowledge.
Shout out to Kevin from The Office because now apparently he has made a lot
I
of
saw
money.
that. Yeah, I saw that. That had me dying the other day. But okay,
um,
so what do you want to start with first? What award do you want to go into first? Do you want to just go straight into Best Picture, or do you want to kind of build up to that?
we'll build up to that. I mean, most people have already seen it, I'm sure, but I do want to say
Yes, true.
shout out to Coco. I'm very glad that beat out Boss Baby for animated feature.
And if Boss Baby won animated feature, man,
There was
I'm
going to be an
so happy.
uprising.
Yeah, like I mean, Lego Batman already didn't get nominated. That was already kind of bull crap, but
All right, but we won't stay on that for too long.
yeah, yeah. So we'll start, I guess, with for best adapted screenplay. Call Me by Your Name was the winner.
Yeah, and I
It
think
beat out Mudbound, Disaster Artist.
yeah, I like to see Call Me by Your Name beat out. A lot of what it did. It would have been cool to see Logan win. But Call Me by Your Name, it was a very beautifully written film. Um, it was adapted very well.
Hmm.
Um, I don't really have a problem with that winning. I wasn't like excited to see it win per se, but
Yeah.
it was probably my number 2 pick. So
But so yeah, I definitely had an investment in Logan. Anybody who's watched any of these past shows knows that's like by far. Um, but I'm looking through these other films. Call Me by Your Name probably after Logan for me. I agree, it probably was deserved that award. And I never expected Logan to win. I didn't even expect it to get nominated for a screenplay award.
yeah, so I will say that was kind of cool in and of itself that it at least
Yeah.
got the nomination.
The fact that it got recognized in some capacity at the Oscars was pretty cool. But Call Me by Your Name it's a terrific film. It's a terrific story. It's a terrific well written movie. So it deserved to win. I have no issues with that.
Sure. All right, we'll go ahead and get into original screenplay. So the nominees were The Shape of Water,
Yep.
Lady Bird, The Big Sick, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and then the winner, which was Get Out by Jordan Peele. I will say that was the one I was pulling for. I thought it was such a brilliant movie, intelligent, scary. I just think it was original, it was creative. No one deserved it as much as Peele did.
I'm happy Jordan Peele won something tonight. I wasn't expecting him to win Best Director, that award, but I'm happy he won Best Original Screenplay because that is a very unique movie. It's something that's a concept that you haven't really like. It's original,
Right.
Or some of these other ones, but I mean, for me, this is something that I'm reading over the screenplay for this, right, or the script for this, or whatever, or somebody pitches me this idea, I'm like, say what? Like, I don't
Exactly.
know. Like, that seems like
A little too far-fetched.
yeah, but he made it work brilliantly, and he deserved this for me.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. Yeah, so I was happy to see that. Next, let's get into
All right,
cinematography. Now, this isn't really a huge category to get into, but I just want to say Roger Deakins finally got his Oscar for Blade Runner 2049, and I actually kind of cheered out a little bit out loud when I saw that. I was, this is the man that's, he was a cinematographer for something like Shawshank Redemption. Didn't get the Oscar.
yeah.
And so to see him get Blade Runner 2049, he finally got his Oscar on one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen.
Absolutely, that film, and it did this the same way that the original Blade Runner did this. The shots, the setting, it was absolutely amazing. It was in a way it was almost essential to the film in a way that it's not too many films.
Exactly. It felt that each frame of this film was, so well set up and captured it just the right way. I can't say enough nice things about this, but I just want to give him a shout out because it's about damn time he won.
Yeah, the one thing I will say as far as cinematography is concerned, he wouldn't have actually been my first choice. I would have gone with Dunkirk over Blade Runner 2049.
Really?
Not to knock against Blade Runner 2049, but with Dunkirk, I feel it's such a great film, and the reasons it's such a great film are cinematography, score, and directing. Those, I think, are the 3 things that make that movie stand out as such a great film this year. Characters or anything like that. It's the cinematography, it's the music or the score, and it's the directing. So for me, so much more of an integral part to Dunkirk, I think, than it is to Blade Runner 2049. I would have given that to Dunkirk over Blade Runner 2049.
All right, well, let's agree to disagree, because,
So I'm not mad. Blade Runner, like, props to you. Like, it deserved it too. But I mean,
Sure.
if I had to choose personally, like, I was the Academy, I would have chosen.
And then just another little thing, just another little category I want to mention before we get into the bigger ones.
Okay.
The Shape of Water for original score actually beat out Hans Zimmer score for Dunkirk, which surprised
Yeah,
me quite a bit.
yeah, the fact Dunkirk didn't do too well in terms of winning tonight or winning at the Oscars.
Right, it got all the nominations, but it got very few wins.
And I thought it was almost I don't want to say a lock, but I was pretty confident that Dunkirk was going to win best original score.
Sure, yeah, I agree.
But it kind of shocked me, but at the same time it didn't, because Shape of Water, I feel like, because
Yeah.
I was expecting it to win a lot of things.
But I will say it wasn't. It was a very. It was also a beautiful score, but Dunkirk felt very grand and epic, and I wouldn't have been upset to see either one win. Honestly, I wasn't disappointed.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But so let's go ahead and get into some of the bigger categories now.
All right.
We'll go ahead and get into best director. All right.
Director.
So we got nominees: Guillermo del Toro, Jordan Peele, Greta Gerwig, Christopher Nolan, and Paul Thomas Anderson. Guillermo del Toro ultimately winning. I think no big surprise there.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It would have been cool to see Peele win, but he's really the only one I would have preferred to see win over Del Toro, and even then, I think Del Toro certainly deserved this one. The Shape of Water is a beautiful film. It's a fairy tale about a fish creature, and for that to come over across the screen, and be able to feel for both the characters, I just think it was fantastically done, and few directors could accomplish that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think what he did with The Shape of Water, it was like, that movie's great because of the directing.
Exactly.
Like he brought that to life in a way that like I was skeptical about that film going in, just because of the overall concept. I'm like, is this really like concepts that like is justified to make a movie about or whatever,
Right, I agree with you there.
But seeing the way he brought it to life and the way he told the story, he deserved that award. I think I'm not at all mad.
Yep, I can agree with you there. And then actor and actress. So for best actor, we had Denzel Washington for Roman J. Israel, Esquire, Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out, Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread, Timothée Chalamet for Call Me by Your Name, and Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Oldman ended up ultimately winning. No big surprise. He was such a phenomenal, character in that film. I'm not the only person who didn't realize it was the same Gary Oldman when I was watching it. It looked like he could have very easily been Winston Churchill.
Absolutely. If you didn't tell me that was Gary Oldman, I would not have recognized him.
Exactly. And a lot of that, props go to the makeup department as well. But
mm-hmm.
the mannerisms, the vocal inflections, everything about that was so phenomenally done.
Like he deserves this award through and through for his performance. It's great to see him get one. But yeah, I don't have tons to add. It was a great performance. He got every little detail down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I said, watching that film, didn't cross my mind watching that film that was Gary Oldman. I was so engrossed in his performance. It was
absolutely.
I'm watching Winston Churchill. I mean,
yeah, it felt like you were watching a found footage almost.
Yeah, and it's like you see the other names on this list. None of them gave bad performances by any means. They all deserved nominations, but I wasn't expecting, Timothée Chalamet or Daniel Kaluuya or Denzel Washington to win. The only person I felt had any chance of winning this that wasn't Gary Oldman was Daniel Day-Lewis.
And even then, I feel like that would have been a disservice to Oldman.
Yeah. And not because he had a better performance or anything, just because he's Daniel Day-Lewis and he's,
Sure.
One of the greatest actors ever.
And so one more thing before we move on. I just want to say Timothée Chalamet is becoming one of my favorite actors after seeing him in Call Me By Your Name and Lady Bird and a few other things I saw him in. I can't think. But he has, he's one of the most phenomenal actors, and he's still so young. It's fantastic to see him already getting nominations.
No, absolutely. Like, he's. I can't wait to see what he does, man. He's terrific. Like you said, at such a young age.
All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into actress.
Okay.
So we have Meryl Streep for The Post, Saoirse Ronan for Lady Bird, Margot Robbie for I, Tonya, Sally Hawkins for The Shape of Water, and Frances McDormand for Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Yeah.
Frances McDormand ultimately winning. Again, same as Oldman, not surprising at all. Both went very much according to plan.
I don't know. I feel like Best Actress was a little more of an open competition than Best Actor was.
Yeah. Who would you have? Who else do you think it could have gone to?
Like I said, I could have seen Sally Hawkins walk out with that award. I could have seen Saoirse Ronan walk out.
Sure.
I'm not going to say I didn't expect Margot Robbie to win. I didn't really expect Meryl Streep to win, even though she's Meryl Streep. But I could have realistically seen 3 of those 5 people walking out winning that award.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that it was. I guess McDormand, in my eyes, did deserve it just because that was, I thought that was one of the best movies of the year in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, I don't think it just because she won most of the different award ceremonies, it could have gone to a few different people.
She was definitely like my favorite to win. I'm just saying, I think I could have seen Saoirse Ronan or Sally Hawkins winning as well. Since McDormand deserved to win, I think her performance in Three Billboards was incredible.
Absolutely. And since we're talking about the ones that a lot of people were able to predict, and we kind of glaze over these, but supporting actor and actress both went to the suspected winners, being Allison Janney for I, Tonya, and Sam Rockwell for Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I wasn't upset or surprised to see either of those win. Both of them were well deserved. Phenomenal performances per usual.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. I think both you said they were obviously the favorites, but they deserve to be the favorites. The one thing I'll say in general about supporting actors, I was kind of disappointed that there was 2 people from the same movie nominated for that award.
Yeah, but there were people you could have given it to besides, but Woody Harrelson and Sam Rockwell both did put on some of the best performances.
Yeah, but I'm saying that there's other people that I think you could have put in there that deserve to be put in there.
Right. Yeah, I can't argue with that.
But so that's the only reason I'm a little salty about putting 2 people from the same movie in the best supporting actor area. But like I said, they were both great performances. So
yeah, all right.
Yeah, so let's get into the big one now.
Yeah, without further ado,
picture. So nominees: The Shape of Water, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Phantom Thread, Side of Ebbing, Missouri, Get Out, The Post, Call Me by Your Name, and Lady Bird. Shape of Water. I don't think that's too shocking. But yeah, it deserved it. It was a great film. Guillermo del Toro, we mentioned, did a terrific job. Terrific performances all around. An amazing story, amazingly well shot. I mean, it deserved it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I went in, I was secretly pulling for Three Billboards, just because I thought that was a very special movie. It was very important and very well done. But I was by no means disappointed to see Del Toro walk away with director as well as picture, especially for what he did in that movie. I don't want to praise him too much, but he really was fantastic with that film. Blew me away with such a oddball idea, an oddball storyline. But I thought it was fantastic.
That is one of those films. It was like I said earlier. I think I had I would have been like if you would have told me that this would have been the film that was the front runner for best director or best picture. I wouldn't have believed you if you told me before it came out.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
But
Um,
it blew me away. It proved me wrong. It surprised me. It was a terrific film, terrifically well done. Thing I got.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, so anything that were a big snub or disappointment for you throughout all of the Oscars?
Um, this isn't necessarily like pertaining to like any of the awards or anything. I just one thing I wanted to point out about the Oscars was this is actually lowest watched Oscars of all time by a significant amount. Um,
Right.
I wanted to guess, I guess, kind of get your thoughts about that real quick.
Yeah, so I think the only thing I really can say about that, without, I haven't seen the numbers, but I didn't hear that was one of the lowest rated ones. A lot of the movies didn't have, besides Get Out, a lot of them didn't have the same impact on certain crowds, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um, in the past, you had something like La La Land that everybody loved that movie, but you also had like the Moonlight, which was important to certain communities or groups of people. Where this year it kind of felt like it was just a little all over the place, which isn't a bad thing. Um,
hmm
but I think honestly, what I think it is people are kind of just getting tired of the Oscars. So they just don't really care this much or that much anymore.
yeah. For me, I think the reason why the ratings were so low this year is kind of something that you touched on. It's there's no like the only real blockbuster-ish film that was nominated for any major awards was Dunkirk.
Right.
And that's kind of the lower end of the blockbuster-ish type movies. Um, back in the day, that used to be a thing that happened all the time. Movies like Forrest Gump, people saw that. Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings, people
exactly.
saw that.
Yeah, the Oscars have kind of become this very pretentious or prestigious, I should say.
Yeah,
We won't go after the movies that made the most money. We just want the ones that nobody saw. We want the ones that we just want to try and stay cooler than everybody, I guess.
yeah, because it's one of those things where it's like I get most comic book movies or most like blockbuster movies in general follow the same formula. And I'm not saying nominate movies like Transformers or anything because you shouldn't. Those shouldn't
Never,
be anywhere near the
never.
Oscars. Movies like Wonder Woman or Logan, or in the past films like like The Dark Knight or something. Those are films that deserve to get recognition, and just because they're comic books or blockbusters, I feel they're almost getting overlooked.
Right.
It's one of those things where like Logan getting nominated for best adapted screenplay. I feel is like them kind of giving people like me who felt it should have been nominated or something or represented in some capacity. It's like, oh, they'll give them a bone and just kind of nominate them for something that they're not going to win and it's not one of the bigger awards, but here you go.
Yeah, I can agree with you there. Um, yeah, and I almost feel like that's what happened to a movie like Blade Runner or a movie
Yeah,
like Logan, where they would have gotten more nominations had they not been such high budget films.
exactly. Because
Um,
like Blade Runner 2049 is I think another great example. That film, for all intensive purposes, was best films of the year. Um, in almost every conceivable way, it was terrifically well done. It was terrifically directed, shot, for performances. I mean, and you don't really see it get much love in any of these categories. I don't know. I think that contributes to why the Oscars are getting a little low ratings.
yeah, I think you're going to continue to see, even if next year there's a little bit of an increase, it's not going to be anything substantial until there's something actually newsworthy. Um,
Because like I don't know.
yeah,
It's just
yeah. I don't think there's too much to say about it besides, you know,
so I just want to touch on that real quick.
yeah, I think that's
Um,
definitely fair.
but anything else you want to touch on or?
I think that's about it. The Oscars did a pretty good job of going exactly where people expected it to go.
Yep.
No big surprises, no big disappointments for the most part.
Yep.
But yeah, any closing remarks, sir?
No.
All right, yeah, I think that's everything. Yeah, so be sure to like this video, or this podcast for that matter. Subscribe, share it with your friends, family, and especially your aunts and uncles. And
Especially.
all right, I think that's everything. Have a good one. Later.
You see.